You're listening to the Hello Awesome podcast, and this is episode number 151. Hey, everybody, welcome back to the Hello Awesome podcast. I am your host, Jacy Lee Pulford. We have been going through the last season ever, season 10, right here on the podcast, and it has truly been amazing. I have enjoyed seeing your feedback and just knowing that God's hand has been on this the entire time. It is humbling and it's such a blessing to me. So I hope that you have been really gleaning some amazing nuggets of wisdom throughout these past episodes. And today is no different. But before we get into what my guest has for us today, I want to just remind you again, I'm going to be doing this every week, but I am collecting podcast reviews, any reviews about guests that have blessed you, any voice memos you'd like to share about what God has taught you at all, at any point in time over these last couple of years through the podcast. Please send them to me. I'm gathering them for a really cool celebration send-off episode that's going to kind of tie up with a bow this last podcast season. So please send all those messages either to my email, helloawesomeshop@gmail.com, or DM them to me on Instagram at helloawesomelive so that I can compile everything and we can have a really cool last episode together. All right, guys, today's guest is a friend of mine who shares a state with me. She also is incredibly talented. You may have heard of a group called the McKains. Her name is Nicole McKain, and she's usually very quiet and very shy, but she has opened up today on this episode, and I am so excited for you to hear it. Nicole talks about how we need to refocus and how God's been showing her how to do that this last year. And we get into how her growing up as a PK and also in the music ministry and having her hands, in everything, and how that kind of has shaped her as a person, and how we need to truly refocus on what matters, especially when we do ministry. So let's get right into it. This is episode number 151 that I am calling Refocus with Nicole McKain. Hey guys, I'm Jacy. Are you ready for real conversations about faith, business, and life? Me too. This is the Hello Awesome podcast, where I bring forth topics and truthful insights that will encourage you to make intentional choices and pursue God with your whole heart. Are you ready to say hello to the awesome blessings that God has for you? All right, let's do this. This is the point where I usually share sponsored ads, and all of my sponsors share their amazing deals that they have with you. But since this is the last season of the podcast, I just have to say thank you. Thank you so much for supporting these faith-based businesses these last 4 years. If you want to continue supporting anything, well, how about buying some of my books? If you go on Amazon, just type in my name, Jacy, Jacy, Pulford, Pulford, and you will find all of my titles right there on Amazon. The awesome thing is, if you have Prime, your books will ship in just a couple of days. I have on there some awesome devotions that will help you with your mental health, with forgiveness, with your power of influence. I also have Bible study guides if you're struggling with your devotion time, or if you want to dive into the stories of 7 ungodly women of the Bible. I almost forgot to share with you my modest fashion coloring books. I have 3 out right now, and the latest is a garden theme. It has florals, inspirational quotes, scriptures, and of course, beautiful modest fashion illustrations that anyone at any age can color and have fun with. Thank you guys for supporting the ministry of Hello Awesome. Be sure to check out my books on Amazon. And just because there won't be any new podcast episodes does not mean there won't be any new books. So be sure to check those out. Hey everybody, welcome back to the Hello Awesome Podcast Season 10. I have been so blessed by the different conversations we've had on here, and it's still crazy that it is the last season of the podcast, but I have today a very sweet friend of mine, Nicole McKain. I cannot wait to get into this. Nicole, I want to just thank you for taking time to be with me today and agreeing to, step out of your comfort zone and, break your shell, to be on the podcast with me. And I would love it if you could just share a little bit about who you are and what you do.
Sure. Hello, Jacy. Hello, everyone. Thank you so much, Jacy, for having me on your podcast. I feel very honored to be on here. I feel like this is a good thing for me, even though it is coming out of my shell. That's always a good thing. So, as she said, my name is Nicole McKain. I'm 26 years old. I live in Connecticut. I have lived here for about 10 years now. I actually relocated to Connecticut from Maryland with my family, for ministry. So my dad pastors a church here in Connecticut called Apostolic Refuge Tabernacle. We've had this church for about 8 years now. So I'm heavily involved in ministry at that church. In addition to that, I am in a group with my siblings called the McKains. We've been singing my whole life. So we've been singing together for a long time. We've made some albums together, and our most recent album that we recorded was a few years ago. It has not been released yet, but it's in progress. So, I'm a pastor's kid. I am in ministry. I pretty much just serve wherever there's a need. So nothing in particular, kind of a little bit of everything. Currently, I'm heading the music ministry at my church, and as well as any other place that I need to fill in. That's what I do at my church. And I love my family. I'm very close and connected to my family. And that's pretty much it about me.
So what a lot of people don't know is that you and I live in the same state. So it's pretty cool. We don't see each other often because of life and stuff like that. Usually it's at Winter Fire.
Right. Exactly.
But yeah, it's been really, really cool to just see, the success of the McKains and see how you guys have grown over the years as artists, as people, siblings together. Right. And that's really awesome. I didn't know that you guys came from Maryland. So that's really, really cool. I wish I could move to Maryland. So
Maryland is a pretty cool state, so I understand that.
Yeah, it's definitely different than Connecticut, that's for sure.
Completely different. But Connecticut is cool too, so that's fine.
We're 2 hours from Boston, 2 hours from New York, so I feel like we're right in the middle.
Right.
Yeah. So I am asking my guests this season just one question that's inspired by Luke 10:42. That's the story of Martha and Mary. If a lot of people aren't familiar, Martha is a servant and she's taking care of everything. The Lord Jesus has been invited into her home, and she's being the servant like she thinks that she has to be, and like we would all think that we have to be. And her sister Mary is sitting at the feet of Jesus, not helping her. And she gets frustrated and asks the Lord to, hey, make my sister help me. I'm doing all the work. And Jesus responds with, Mary has chosen, this good thing. And it made me think of like, wow, a good thing, one thing, as I was reading this story. And I really wanted to ask this question to my guests this season. What is one thing that Jesus has taught you in the past year that you will never forget?
Mm-hmm. So I actually really love this story. This story really speaks to me and ministers to me. When you mentioned one thing, it's for me, it's always hard to choose just one thing in anything, but in this, on this topic of choosing one thing that I've learned over the past year, because I feel like there's so many things that I've been learning, but one thing, and in relation to this story that has really stuck out to me, that I've learned this year is to refocus. Because I feel like a lot of times that I have been Martha operating in ministry, you know, as a pastor's kid, of a growing church, a home missions church. There's obviously a lot of places that need to be filled. So, it's easy to get caught up in serving and not really focusing on the main thing, the most important thing, which is sitting at the feet of Jesus. So I feel like in this past year, the Lord has been teaching me that I need to refocus. And while serving is good and serving is necessary, it's also so necessary for us to sit at the feet of Jesus. Because if we're serving everybody else and we're not sitting at the feet of Jesus, then we're empty on the inside. And we're going to be, you know, we're going to feel like how Martha felt towards Mary, like, I'm doing all this and I'm making sure that everything is in place and everything is together. And she's not helping me. You know, she's here sitting at the feet of Jesus and not helping me to make sure that everything is in order. But really, Mary is doing what is most important, which is being fed and communicating and, you know, sitting at the master's feet. And that's one thing that God has really been teaching me over the past year, especially now. In the past year, I've picked up a lot more responsibility. My brother used to be the music minister at our church, and he, this past year, relocated to New York. So when he left, I took over playing piano and, you know, being the music minister for our church. And that's just one more thing that was on my plate that I wasn't expecting, but that really takes up a lot of my time and, you know, energy. And in that, it's easy to get lost in that and to focus so much on that, especially because I am not as talented as my brother. So it takes a lot more effort for me to prepare songs for a service and to, you know, play and make sure that everything is in place. So for me, that takes a lot more out of me. So it's easy to lose focus and focus on, you know, focus more on serving than actually, you know, being fed and sitting at the feet of Jesus. And, you know, my whole life, pretty much, I've been a pastor's kid. So it's kind of second nature to me to be in servant mode. You know, I'm always looking around in a service to see what can be done, what needs to be done. I'm never really just sitting still in the service and just taking it all in. So naturally, it's harder for me to, you know, just sit and soak at the feet of Jesus and, you know, be fully in the worship and the word. There's always something to be done. But what God has really been teaching me is to, you know, slow down and make sure that the main thing is the main thing.
Such a word right there. Oh my goodness. Refocus. That's so good. And it's true. Like, we are called to be servants. And I know, you know, we hear that all the time. We almost need to be a little bit of both, a little bit of Martha, a little bit of Mary.
Right.
Yeah, it's so easy to get caught up in the roles that we have and make everything, you know, kind of run. You know, we all have our hands in different things and we all need each other. But
Sure.
to refocus and to ask yourself, okay, but why am I here?
Exactly.
And to make sure you take that time with Jesus, even if you have a lot of different roles you have to do in the service. I mean, maybe you won't have time to go to the altar altar call because you'll be on the piano, you know?
Right.
So that is a different shift, probably for some people. But, refocusing and saying, well, I can still make sure that I take that time, that pocket of time with Jesus, a different part of the
Right.
service or a different part of the day. Yeah,
Exactly.
that's definitely something to think about. And also, like you were saying that you're not as talented as your brother, and that's gonna get in your head too, I'm sure, sometimes. And it is awesome that we have a God that we can go to with that stuff.
Right.
And um, taking time to be at his feet kind of reminds you of like, oh, like being with Jesus, he will remind you like what you are called to do and the gifts that he has given you, and hopefully can uh, reiterate kind of, that refocus of like, okay, so I might not be as good in my opinion or facts or whatever,
Mm-hmm.
but being with Jesus, he's reminding me that I'm still called to do this,
Right.
you know?
Exactly. Yeah. And I just love this scripture, this chapter actually. There's so many things that's going on. It's a pretty long chapter. But the one verse, besides the one that you pointed out, the one verse that also really sticks out to me is where she's talking about, how Martha, how she's doing all these things to serve, and Martha's not helping her. And I love how Jesus just comes in and he says, this is verse 41. And Jesus answered and said unto her, Martha, Martha, thou art careful and troubled about many things, but one thing is needful, and Mary hath chosen that good part, which shall not be taken away from her. And that really stuck out to me because Jesus, he wasn't angry with her. He wasn't upset with her. He was so gentle and compassionate in his answer to her, even though she was technically getting it wrong. She was focusing on the wrong thing, but he was gently calling her back to the main thing, the important thing. And I feel like that's how Jesus has been calling me this year. He's been gently calling me back to him, back to the main focus, which is him, reminding me to take out time. It's not just about the service, but before the service, during the week, spending time with him, making sure that I'm being filled up, because being in ministry, we do pour out a lot. So it's very important to make sure that you have your moments to fill up on Jesus as well. So that really stuck out to me.
Yeah. Yeah, you're right. I mean, our relationship with Jesus is more than just the service,
Right.
and I think sometimes we can maybe feel like I've done enough for you today. Like maybe you can leave me alone the rest of the day, which is so sad to think of. But I do feel like sometimes our actions and maybe how we feel, maybe we get moody or emotional as
Mm-hmm.
humans do. That is kind of like, okay, like I served you and I did what you need to do. And now I can have like some free time. And
Mm-hmm.
there's nothing wrong with that as far as like we all need a, a break, to
Right.
do fun things. But it's
Mm-hmm.
just not shutting him out completely of those different things that you have to do or that you choose to do,
Mm-hmm.
where no matter what you're doing, you could always still have him on your mind
Right.
as like, just say a little quick prayer or, Lord, like, I have to do this and this is kind of frustrating, but I kind of need you to be with me here, and just be real with God because he's always been real with us.
Right.
Right.
Yeah. One thing that I've definitely struggled with is, feeling that spending time with Jesus needs to be this big production every time. Not production, but it would get to a point where I would feel that if I couldn't, be on my knees for a certain amount of time, then it wasn't effective. If I just had like little pockets of time during the day. to talk to Jesus. And so that has kind of been a mindset shift for me too, that yes, it's very important to spend time with Jesus, set aside time to spend with him every day. But, sometimes some days are busier. Some days we can't spend as much time, but it's not just a one-time thing. Oh, I talk to him this one time a day. I make this appointment, and then the rest of the day I do my own thing, and then I'll catch up with him tomorrow. But there's time throughout the day to, focus and keep our mind on Jesus. And, he's always there. He's always there to listen. I'm sure you can attest to this too, just random times throughout the day, whether it be driving or walking, just feeling his presence, feeling that he's near. And yeah, those are really the little moments that may seem like little moments, but, they all really come together to draw us closer to him and build our relationship with him. So I think that's very important as well.
Yeah, I do too. And I'm glad you brought that up because I feel like that's something that a lot of us think of, like a lot of us struggle with, because that was definitely something for me. Because as life goes on, if you get married, have, children, or you get a new job, you move away or whatever, life gets crazy, then you start to feel guilty. And then that guilt leads to shame. And then you almost don't want to do anything because you are full of shame and you don't feel good enough. It's like this spiral. And I remember having that thought of like thinking of biblical times and how things were. And there were definite like times when they had specific moments to pray, especially in the Jewish culture. They're very ritualistic in how they pray. But at the same time, I start thinking of, missionaries when they're out in the mission field and how they're getting thrown different things all the time. Their schedule probably is not as easily structured as maybe we have it here, or even comfortable, and excuse me. I started thinking of like, well, they obviously are in the will of God and they're doing what God has asked them to do. So maybe like the praying for 3 hours in the morning doesn't really dictate how deep our faith goes, or a requirement to be close to the Lord. Now, if we have that time to do it, sure. But to think that every prayer time has to be this, like upper room moment is such a high expectation. And also realizing that when Jesus came here, he walked and talked and spent time with them throughout their day. And that's how he wants us to be too,
So true. Yeah. Yeah. And especially like people with a perfectionist mentality, like you said, it could really be a downward spiral where if we're not having like this perfect prayer time, then it gets to a point where we just end up not doing it at all. And that's not a good place to be. But I think God really just wants to hear from his children, he wants to spend time with us, and the little pockets in the day, I think, are very sweet moments to have with him and just builds our relationship stronger with him.
Yeah. And so let me ask you this as a pastor's kid, somebody who, grew up in the church. I did not. So I'm raising children in the church. So that's different. I'm trying to raise them in a way that I was never raised. I was raised with an awareness of God, and we went to church a little bit, but the level is a lot different right now. Which is, what I am grateful for. But do you find that because this has been your lifestyle and everybody around you has kind of always done this, that it's harder for you to kind of refocus and and sit at his feet a little bit more?
Yeah, so for me, growing up, of course, being in a pastor's home, um, there was definitely a lot of exposure to that environment. You know, I grew up, and still to this day, my parents, every morning, they pray very early in the morning. And I'm very grateful that I was exposed to that we grew up in a home where prayer was modeled and where I was taught to pray by my parents. And, you know, growing up around that, it took a while to find that on my own. And in trying to find that, there was a lot of, I want to say, pressure, knowing that, you know, my parents had this schedule that not a schedule, but they're consistent in waking up early and praying every morning, you know, and me growing up, trying to build my relationship with God. Um, it seemed like a lot of pressure. But as I grew and as I drew closer to God, um, it became more of a personal thing for me. And the way that I do it may look a little different from the way that they do it, but I don't think that there's anything wrong with that. I feel like it had to be that way for me to form a relationship with God in a way that was right for me. So I'm very grateful to have grown up in a household that taught me how to pray and taught me the importance of prayer and put that in me, that it's important to pray daily. And, you know, that has stuck with me. But also I have come to realize that throughout the day is also a time to communicate with God.
Yeah. I'm glad you said that because I think there are a lot of people out there who can relate to what you just said. Especially those who, you know, had good examples of a prayer, you know, good prayer life, good, you know, relationship with God. And feeling that pressure. And I think that's what as a mom now, I'm seeing that. And especially my oldest, he just turned 11. And we have a lot of candid discussions. I'm all about just sitting down and talking with your kids or talking, you know, with your whoever family members about stuff because I know some people are like, oh, you guys can talk stuff to death, you know, but I think that I would rather have them talk to me than anybody else. And
Exactly.
if it's something that I don't like, I still would like to hear it from you. And there was something that I felt he shared with me about like even the pressure to pray at the altar, you know, at church camp. And for a little kid, that's a big deal. I mean, they're socially awkward. They don't know who they are yet. A lot of these kids, they know, and then there's a lot that they don't know. Every year, there might be new kids that come. And I think there's something about, you start to feel really self-conscious that everybody is probably looking at me right now, or everybody can see me. And I know we're talking about like public prayer right now, but I think that also kind of can filter into when you're alone and you're a kid in church, that you still have that like fear of like, people can watch me, people can hear me. You know what I mean? And I think that also like plays into the hesitancy. I think that sometimes can happen to where you're not sure if you want to step out and do that because it's just so uncomfortable and you just feel so awkward.
Yeah, I can definitely relate to how your son said he was feeling. You know, growing up, I went to church camps as well, and I would go to church camps sometimes it would be just my siblings and I that would go as a group. Other times we would have other youth from our church, but a couple of the times that we went would just be my siblings and I. And I grew up a very shy kid, so that kind of environment with a bunch of kids that I didn't know was that was hard for me. And it did feel like a lot of pressure, to going up to the altar and praying around a bunch of people that you don't know.
Terrifying.
Growing up, you don't understand necessarily fully the power of community and, the importance of corporate prayer. So that was a challenge for me as well growing up. And like you said, even in private, praying, you have in your mind this model of, the people that you've heard praying growing up. So like my parents, I grew up hearing them pray eloquent prayers and, as a kid trying to model that and, pray the way that they pray. It was a lot of pressure, but, as time went on, I was able to figure out, what works for me, figure out that I can come to God and just really be plain with him. Of course, be respectful, but, really be plain with him and tell him what's on my mind, tell him how I'm feeling. And that whether it's the eloquent words or if you're just speaking from your heart, he hears it all. He understands it all. He knows your heart. And that the important thing is that you're making time to communicate with him and talk to him. And I think that's what's most important.
Yeah, definitely. So I'm curious, do you find that you find yourself like only praying like when you have time? Let's say in the morning if you have time. Some people don't. I know when I first came into church, I worked really early in the morning. So I actually did all my prayer, Bible study, all that at nighttime. Which as long as I got it in the day, it didn't matter. But do you find like reading scripture or listening to worship music helps when you pray, or do you just need silence?
So for me, I do wake up pretty early in the morning for work. So I don't have as much time in the morning to pray, but when I try to carve out time in the morning to pray and spend time with God. And also on my commute to work, I use that time to spend with God as well. For me, my mind tends to wander a lot, especially if say it's the middle of the day and I'm going from, doing something into prayer. My mind wanders so much. So I find that worship music helps me, not necessarily worship music with words, but just, worship piano music definitely helps me to focus in. Or even if I do start out, to a worship song and then it turns into prayer, I find that really helps me to focus in and, set my mind in the mode of prayer. And that's definitely helpful.
Yeah, I'm with you. I think it's easy for us to get, distracted or our mind wanders. I mean, we have a lot going on.
Mm-hmm.
And especially if you're starting your day, I like that idea to put worship music on without the words, because I do find sometimes I'm now just listening to their words and then I'm not praying.
Yeah, it could be distracting.
And I try to find a worship song that's not like live, which is kind of hard. I do love live worship music, but then I'm like, well, I need to make sure that if it's on YouTube, I have my phone turned away from me, or else I'll just watch the video.
Exactly. Yeah.
Oh, but yeah, I was just curious because I know some people are different in how they pray, and if some people don't want to add music and they might find that distracting, but I know for you, it probably just gets you to refocus because that's where your heart is, music ministry.
Right. Exactly.
Yeah.
I just realized I missed one part of your question. So as far as the Bible reading, I find that at night is better for me. I'm not really sure why, but usually I do my Bible reading at night. And also like I said, a lot of times my mind tends to wander. So I find that listening to the audio helps me a lot to focus. Um, so listening to the audio of the Bible helps me.
You end up doing any like journaling or note taking at all?
I do some journaling. Usually when I do note taking, I use the Bible app and I like will highlight and make a comment for myself. But I also do some written journaling because I do like the idea of like writing it down and it just reinforces it in your mind. So I do a little bit of both.
Yeah, that's I I like both of those things because I think the technology that we have is pretty ridiculous. I mean, we should use everything to our advantage for sure. I
Yeah.
remember like, when you're like sick or overwhelmed or something, or like for me it was like having a new baby or life is crazy, like listening to the Bible. Um, I mean, people need to get on that. Just like it's so different hearing it out loud.
It is.
Um, because I think as we read, sometimes our eyes skip like words.
Definitely.
Uh, but then when you hear it, you're like, whoa, I didn't realize the story was like that. But and I do journal because I do think that when you write it in your own handwriting and you read it that way, for me anyway, that's how I learned. So it's easy for me to remember.
Right. Yeah.
Um, but I just think it's just awesome that you just have to carve out that time depending on how your day is and how your life is. And I
Yeah,
think
you
that's what the whole point of connecting with him is about.
hmm Yeah, definitely. And I find that, listening to the audio of the word, it helps me to read more often because of course at points in the day there's not always a chance to sit down and read, but I can listen while I'm driving, I can listen while I'm doing anything. And while it is important to sit down and read because that's when you can really take notes, I feel like it's also important to, listen throughout the day and just any moment that you can make the time to do it. That and prayer, it's important to find those times during the day.
Uh, Yeah, so what apps do you like to use or what programs do you like to use for that?
Well, the main one that I use is the Holy Bible app with the U version. That's the main
Yes.
one I use.
Yeah, I do like that one too. And
Yeah.
they do have some they really have some good like Bible plans on there too, some devotions on there.
Yeah, they really do.
Um yeah, that one too is one that I remember playing out loud and I would quote a verse. And I remember one time my oldest, he must have been like 3, maybe 2. He was little, but I was playing it for us at breakfast. And I remember I was out loud reciting the scripture that he was reading. And he goes, Mom, let the guy talk. That's what he said to me.
That's
Like,
what-
geez.
Right.
Well, okay. I mean, he's not wrong, but it got me laughing. But yeah, that is a good app for sure. And somebody else put me on the Blue Letter Bible app. I haven't, I don't know if it talks to you. I think it does. But
Mhm.
if you need like a Bible app that you can study and they have lots of commentaries and things like that, that's also a good one that someone just told me about.
Yes, I also have used that one in the past too. I haven't used it recently, but yeah, it's great for translating words, like looking at the original translation. So it's a great Bible study tool for, especially for preachers and speakers. That's a great tool to use as well.
Yeah. So I want to know, what has been like? I know this is, I'm just giving you big questions today. No, I really, I wanted to know when it comes to like refocusing, is there like a song that you usually play or like a band or Christian artist or someone you feel like if I listen to this person's music or if I listen to this specific song, it helps me refocus on the Lord?
That's a great question.
You take your
Um,
time.
yeah. Uh, if I had to choose just one, it's usually a song about either surrender or um and if it's not about surrender, it's about so okay, so you know how some songs are focused on God will do this for me, God will bring me out, and God will, et cetera, which is great and all because, that's it's biblical, Psalms, a lot of Psalms talk about how God will deliver me, God will fight for me. But I find that when I'm trying to refocus, the songs that are strictly about him are what I turn to, to listen to. So any song about surrender, there's one that I love called it's kind of like a play on an old song when it's I Surrender All. And I just love that one. It's a worship song. And yeah, just any song that points me back to him, talks about focusing on him is what I like to listen to when it comes to refocusing.
Yeah, that's good. I know exactly what you mean.
Mm-hmm.
Um, just songs that just sing about him and who he is, and um,
Mm-hmm.
it just reminds you of the important thing,
Right.
um, and how just merciful he is, and how
Yeah.
faithful he is, and he didn't have to do all that he did, but he did it.
Right.
Um, yeah. So I would really, I really love if you kind of putting you on the spot, but if you could like just take a couple minutes to encourage someone right now, like let's say there's someone listening who is really struggling with refocusing their attention to the Lord, refocusing their um just eyes on the Lord, their heart. Um, I just would love if you can just take a couple minutes to just encourage them and just speak a little faith into them and to minister a little bit to them, if you don't mind.
Sure. Yeah. Anyone who's in that place right now, I really resonate and I understand what you're going through because I've been there several times myself. I even still find myself in that place sometimes. It's hard to, life pulls us in a lot of different directions, and not just life, being in ministry pulls us in a lot of different directions. And, it's so easy to focus on, you know, perfection and execution. And, it will make us forget about the main thing, which is Jesus, and our relationship with him. And it's so easy to fall into that trap of serving and thinking that that's enough. I've fallen into the trap of coming to church on a Sunday and doing my part and thinking that that's enough, but it's not. It's not enough to sustain you throughout the week when life throws things at you, because life will throw so many things at you. And without a firm foundation, without a relationship with Jesus, what we do for him is not going to, bring us through. It's not going to hold us over in the storms of life and the times where, we feel weak. We need that time. We need that relationship with Jesus to center us and bring us back into focus. So to anyone in that place right now, I'd say, you don't have to be perfect. God is not looking for your perfection. He's just looking for you to come to him. He's just looking for you to come and desire to spend time with him. You know, it doesn't have to be perfect. You know, it can just be starting out telling him what you're dealing with, telling him what you're struggling with, how you're feeling. And he understands all that. He's touched with the feelings of our infirmities. He knows what we're going through. It's not that he doesn't know, what we're going through already, but he wants to hear from his child. He wants to hear from his friend. I heard somebody say it like this. It's not that God doesn't already have the answer. He's just enjoying the conversation. So that really stuck out to me, that God really wants to talk to me. Who am I that God, the creator of the universe, wants to talk to me, wants to spend time with me? But he does. He loves each and every one of us individually. He wants to hear from you. He wants to hear how you're feeling. He wants you to come to him. He wants to be that safe place that you can run to. That tower, that safe, strong tower that you can run into and, find rest in him, find peace in him. And, refocusing, it will change your life. It really will, because being in ministry and life in general, it can be so stressful, and it can really bring you to a place where you're like, I don't even want to do this anymore, because it pulls you in so many different directions. And then you see people who, just kind of come to church and they don't necessarily do much in the service. It's like you begin to start looking at them like, like they're like they're Mary. And like, oh, they're just in the service, just enjoying God's presence and sitting at the feet of Jesus. And I'm doing all this stuff over here and they're not trying to help me. But, it's so important to take that time to sit at the feet of Jesus, because that's where we'll find the peace, the joy that we need to, be effective in ministry and have a good, strong relationship with God.
And that was so good. And that definitely encouraged me. I've never heard that before about, he's enjoying the conversation. I love that, just because I really do think that's true. I really do. I really think he delights in us. He wants us to delight in him.
He does.
I think of my favorite scripture in Psalms 1, blessed is the man that walketh not through the counsel of the ungodly, nor standeth in the way of sinners, nor sitteth at the seat of the scornful.
Mm-hmm.
But, we delight in the Lord.
Right.
And he that delight, meditates day and night. And I just love that. Just, I probably butchered that last part because I was just so like overwhelmed just now, just thinking of how awesome, like you said, who am I? Like, he wants to delight in me. But that's just how good he really is. He really is that good.
He is. He really is. It amazes me.
Yeah. Well, Nicole, I'm so grateful for you and your sweet words and your presence. It's such a blessing, and I'm so grateful for what you just shared today. I know I'm going to be thinking about it for a long time, and I want you to just share with everybody where they can find you on social media and where they can find your church, whether social media or online.
Okay. Yeah, thank you so much again for having me on. I've really enjoyed my time talking with you and, sharing, and I really appreciate you thinking of me to be a guest on your podcast, and I don't take it lightly. So thank you so much once again for having me. You can find me on social media, on Instagram, and my handle is Nicole, NicoleJ McKain. So Nicole, NicoleJMckain. And I'm on Facebook. It's just Nicole J. McKain. If you want to find my music with my siblings, we have an Instagram page as well called The McKains. That's THEMCKAINS. My church is the church that I attend is Apostolic Refuge Tabernacle in Ansonia, Connecticut. We have an Instagram page as well. And we have a Facebook page, which is where you can catch replays of our services. So that's just Apostolic Refuge Tabernacle on Facebook and Instagram.
That's awesome. Well, thank you again, Nicole, for being with me today.
Thank you.
If you found this episode inspiring or helpful, would you take a screenshot of it and share it on your Instagram stories, tagging me at Hello Awesome Live? I would be so encouraged. Also, please leave a 5-star review in iTunes or Apple Podcasts, sharing how God used this to bless you. Until next time, keep your chin up, beautiful.